Chris was 23 and he'd been working in London as a tree surgeon for quite some time, and he decided he wanted to take his life a little bit more further afield. So off he goes to Australia, got a job out there in Sydney, and was living very much a young person's dream, living in a beautiful apartment, pool, going to the beach every day. He was in Manly. It's right on the edge of Sydney Harbour and it's stunning. And he was having such a wonderful time there. On the 3rd of February 2014, we got a telephone call at 3 o'clock in the morning, which is just every parent's worst nightmare. I will say at first the telephone went probably 3 times and we ignored it because it came up with international, and we just thought it was a cold caller because we'd had a barrage of calls. And then our mobiles started to go as well, and we just thought, hang on a second, something's not quite right here. Every time we missed the call, so we decided next time we would wait for another call and we would grab it, whatever it was, they lined them up. We had to wait another half an hour for those calls to come through. And it was a doctor from North Shore Hospital in Sydney informing us that Chris had had a brain injury. At that time, we weren't really aware of the severity of it. They just said you need to make your way out here as soon as possible. And so from that moment, really, our lives changed. We still didn't really understand the severity of it until we got out there, which by the time we'd booked our flights, got our visas, was about 48 hours later. And we did know it involved a tree because we received a photo before we got on the flight of them actually working on Chris at the scene. Yeah. So we did know it involved a tree, but we didn't really realise afterwards. Chris was harnessed to the tree and the tree fell. He fell 50 foot, which is about equivalent to 4 stories. And but it was quite some while, probably a good couple of weeks before we got to the bottom of what actually happened. Okay, so Chris was harnessed to the tree, was wearing all the safety gear, the chains, the hat and everything. He had his chainsaw attached to him. As he fell, he actually bounced twice. So he came down, hit the ground, went back up. He knew he was falling. He was on the right side of the tree. He was able to ride it down. He put his arm out to save himself, which resulted in a compound fracture in his wrist there. He bounced, and as he bounced, his head hit the ground the first time, and as he bounced up, his hat unfortunately came off. So his head hit the ground a second time on the side. So he went from the side. This resulted in a small bleed at the top of the brain stem. It wasn't a big bleed, it was a very small bleed, but it's where all your muscle control is. So all your fine motor, all your gross motor skills. And that was the problem. Because that means that's everything. It coordinates everything around you. Well, initially, even over the phone, so we were contacting them, they were ringing us every hour back here in the UK to update us. It was very factual. It was where they were, rather than they weren't looking any further at what might come next. They were just, reporting the stability of the situation. And, that's all you can hope for, really. And they were just telling us what medical procedures they needed to do at the time to keep him balanced. Everybody involved was traumatised. Everybody. You know, work colleagues. It was like a ripple on the pond. The arboriculturalists out there, there's lots and lots of groups of them. They were all coming forward and giving their response. It made them very aware of their own risks that they take every day. So we were out there 48 hours later, and then I knew it was bad when they took us into a side room on our own with about 9 professionals, and then they told us how severe Chris's head injury, and prepared us really for what we were about to see. And you know, it was the first time I'd seen Chris in the flesh for about 9 months, so it was quite a big shock for us. But you just hang on to hope all the way along the line, and we were watching the monitors and just taking each day as we went. As a couple, it was quite shocking. We didn't know anybody. We'd got nowhere to stay. We just literally booked our flight, got our visas and went. A couple of Chris's friends took us in and looked after us for the entire time we were out there. I tended not to think about the reality, tended to focus on where we were and the positives, because it was like an iceberg, and I just couldn't, or mountain probably is more accurate, I just couldn't see the top. Couldn't see the top if you really think about it. Yeah, of how far he had to go. Because, he couldn't even sit up. It took initially 5 people to sit him up. So, yeah. And yet, at that time, sitting up, he did it with the support of those 5 people, and I was celebrating. Because you're just hanging on to the hope of the positive bits of it. Yeah, tended not to think too much if I could. You just kind of wanted to just slow down and take every day as it was. He was on oxygen, I wanted him off of oxygen. You just celebrate each bit as you go along, really, as in the early stages. We kept in contact with family via Facebook, because actually repeating the events does nothing for your emotional being, because you're just going over and over and over it. So Facebook was a fantastic kind of communicator. Even when he was in the hospital in his induced coma, we played all his music, we played all his TV programs that he used to like. We talked to him all the time. We were encouraged to do that, to kind of keep that contact and the reassurance. So even though you didn't get a response, it didn't matter, we would still chat away to him, as normal. So when he first started to communicate back with us, we didn't get any further than that. That was it. Gestures, physical gestures, some that he made himself. Initially, it was even before that, was blinking, but that's really hard to do, to read successfully, the blinking, because everybody needs to blink. And then he moved on to a tablet which had a speech program on there, and that could speak aloud. And you know, even through that speech program, you could still hear the Chris that was. It would still talk in the same way that he would at home. Right. Well, abbreviate. He would abbreviate the conversation. You know, so he'd put abbreviations up there. And my husband would say, "Well, what does that mean?" I said, "Well, I can't say it loud." You know. And he would say things like, as well, so this is show his level of understanding of where he is. He'd be like, "Okay, let's go." You get lots and lots of repetition. Every few minutes there'd be a repetition of the same question. You know, where am I? We even tried putting the questions up on the wall that he was asking repetitively for him to refer to. But unfortunately, you needed something to remind him to refer to the point. You know, so that didn't quite work either. So you just go along with it, and you have to be patient, and you have to generally remember that he just doesn't know, even though he might have said 30 seconds ago. He thanked us for being there and said how much he loved us. Yeah. And yet, I don't know if he knew where that was, but he did thank us for that. I just cried. There was lots of crying. Lots and lots of crying. There were tougher things though, when Chris, as he became aware, and as he adjusted to himself, the new Chris, as he was, he got quite withdrawn and quite depressed. And there was some shocking moments, you know, things like, he told me he wanted to get out of there one day. This is all by type. I want to get out of here because I want to throw myself in front of a train. And I was absolutely shocked by that and really distressed. But I was reassured. It was quite common. It was not unusual. You know, the neurologist come and spoke to us, and you know, they made some adjustments with his medication accordingly. He responded really quickly to that, and quickly became level again, and became focused on moving forward. He was quite driven as well to move forward, onwards and upwards. Yeah. We had a big poster that just said "Keep calm and carry on" up on his wall. Yeah. And you know, that wasn't just for him, that was for us. Just keep calm and carry on, you know, and trying to keep things in perspective and not thinking too much. Well, they started even with things like picking up a cup, picking, you know, very, very minor activities, but, you know, opening and closing his hand, reaching for something, even washing his own face with a cloth. It was quite basic activities in daily living for us, but wasn't for Chris. It was huge for Chris. We were encouraged to be there, encouraged to take part, encouraged to look at the technicalities of what was expected so that we could have a go when he wasn't there, to give him that repetition. That repetition was really important, that he just didn't do it in that hour that he had with the OT. They never gave us a proper prognosis. They just said to us one day, "So, Mrs. Hall, what would you expect for your son?" And I said, "Well, I'd like him to walk and talk. That's all I wanted." And the doctor said, well, this could be it. And at that time, Chris was only able to open one eye. He was unable to move anything else. And, well, we were devastated. But I just felt that that wasn't for Chris. That, you know, I just felt that he had much more potential than that. But we were never given a kind of formal prognosis of where he will get to. And never have been. Never have been. They would just tell us that, you know, he's got a problem with his swallowing technique, you know, he has a problem with his concentration, he has a problem. So it's very factual, but not where we were going to get to. But that was fine with me, because it gave us the opportunity to, you know, get where onwards and upwards, basically. Yeah. I mean, we actually didn't know we were going to leave Australia. We knew we were heading towards that way, but we didn't actually get it confirmed until the Friday night. We flew at 10 o'clock on Monday morning. So it was all very quick at the end. The reason we didn't tell anybody else other than our daughters was, again, because we didn't know how we would be emotionally, physically. It's a 24-hour flight. We didn't know how Chris was. We didn't want hordes of family there waiting for us in case it wasn't what it should be. So we sneaked back and just had our daughters waiting for us, and they met us at the rehab. So we went from the plane straight to the rehab. Chris never came home. He went straight there. And it was the best thing we could have done. You know, it gave us time to spend with them. And, you know, we weren't excluding our family at all. We were just making sure it was right for all of us, and then including them. That was quite important, actually, for us. Well, because pressure for everything to be okay, and you know, you just, again, our parents were older. It was putting a huge strain on them. They were very concerned about us. My sister was so ecstatic to see us. She shook with excitement, physically shook. You know, we cried, they cried. You know, often they would cry. I would encourage them not to cry in front of Chris. Don't, you know, go in there and be happy, but come out the room and have a cry. Yeah. But because, again, you wanted him to just keep focusing on moving onwards and upwards. Yeah. I used to get quite cross, actually, after a while. If they cried on the first time, that's fine. But if they kept crying when they came back, it would start to annoy me a little bit, and I'd be saying, look, you know, this is where he is. He's okay. You know, he's making progress. You know, just he's okay. You know, everything's okay. We're making steps forward. Stop crying, and you know, and be happy for him. Yeah. But yes, probably. But that's how it was for me. So Chris was an outgoing person. He had lots of friends. You know, he was young. He enjoyed, you know, going to the pub for a drink with his mates and watching football. He was a keen golfer, very competitive with his golf, and good at it as well. Lots of potential there. He was extremely fit, obsessively fit about himself, you know. protein diets left, right and centre, visiting the gym every day, running, very active, very active. Yeah, it was just, yeah, a young person having a great time, really. He loved his job as a tree surgeon. Come home filthy, sticking a chainsaw, oil and things like that every day, drank gallons of water till it was coming out of his ears. Yeah, he had lots of friends, big circle of friends. That has diminished over the time. That has changed. Yeah, he has a core set of friends that he might not physically see, but they talk through media all the time. I wouldn't like to think it was just because of his head injury that he's lost touch with them. I'm sure there are one or two. I know there are one or two, but I don't know. On the whole, yeah, a lot of them still seem to want to know Chris as he was. Because, via WhatsApp, if he's having a little conversation on there or on Facebook, he writes exactly how he would have written before, So you would never know about his brain injury. Oh, he has a fantastic relationship with Zoe. She's a great person. She clued into him very quickly. They were they became friends quite soon, actually, at Ascot. Chris he's always been a people person. He loves people, so he's quite easy to get on with. And but she clued in very quickly to what he, how to get the best out of him, to be aware of what might frustrate him and try not to to present them too often, but certainly to challenge him. She clued in very quickly to strategies that he could use to support himself. He loves technology, so he uses his phone a lot. So she is aware of adding prompts. She's in the supermarket is a prime example. So she did a layout of the supermarket and numbered the aisles. So when Chris goes, he does a shopping list, which is in an ordered number, and he's aware, he plans before he goes, and he knows exactly which items are where in the store, and that just supports him when he's in the shop. It got to the point where she would accompany him all the way around the store, and then she'd stand at the end of the aisles, and watch him go down the aisle, and then it came to the point where she could meet him towards the end of his shop, and he will have made his own way around. So it's just moving. Her support is just challenging him and making him more independent as we're going along. And then we move store. So, and then he has to cope with change. Well, she did thrive with him, and nobody else did thrive with Chris, only Zoe. And he had his own garden there, which she designed and planted, and he took it one step further because he got the wooden letters of Thrive. He painted them and decorated them so it said Thrive. They were in multicolours. He was very proud of his garden. Very proud indeed. And Sally, his caseworker, she's amazing. They work closely together as well, Zoe and Sally. And they're very good. If I haven't got the knowledge, they will have the contact on where to take it next, really. And I will say that, this whole thing of coming back to Chris being the focus of what he likes to do and what his dreams are, they need to be his guiding factors because they're his motivators. And if it's all about him, it will motivate him to move on and keep going forward. He doesn't, he won't do things just to please people. He won't sit there and say, like, he'll play a game. If we're playing board games, he'll play with us as a family. But if they said, should we play a board game together, just you and I, he'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it to just please you. It's got, he's not doing it as a tokenistic thing. It's got to have purpose for him. You never know how you think you're going to react to something. And don't get me wrong, I do have my down days. Really do. Where I've thought, should I go and seek medical help because I don't think I'm coping very well at the moment. But actually, exercise, getting out in the community, going for a walk, doing things that, would please you, you have to do that. So you have to take a step back and focus on yourself a bit because you need to be strong. So do you remember when I referred to back at the hospital and they said to me, are you eating? Are you drinking? Are you sleeping? Are you resting? And I used to think, well, they're not important. But actually, they're highly important. Because if you're not coping, you can't cope with them. You can't be strong for them. So yeah, that is what I found out about myself. I'm far stronger than I thought I was. As I said, not to plan too far ahead, to be happy with what you've got, and to not to worry about tomorrow, because you don't know what tomorrow might hold. Chris's accident happened in an instant, and it changed everyone's lives from that moment. You just don't know. That can happen to any of us. I met a lot of people that had the silliest of little accidents that you would have just thought, wow, we've all done that. Fallen off a chair, tripped over a curb. You've all heard of these things. And 9 times out of 10, they result in just nothing. But sometimes it's just a little bit more life-changing than you think. And it just happens to anyone. It can happen to, it doesn't discriminate. People say to me, oh, you're so good, you're brilliant. And I'm not sure I could do it. I think that's rubbish. You just get on and do it. You do what's needed of you. And I'm very aware that I actually might not be the person that Chris needs to do something. So I find the right person. With support, I find the right person that can make that happen for him. And that person might have, far more knowledge, like Zoe. Zoe has considerable more knowledge than I do. I'm learning from her as she's teaching Chris, and I can copy what she does to provide Chris with the best opportunities. So I don't see that Chris needs to be grateful to me at all. You can't tell me that you wouldn't do this for any of your children, or even a friend. A close friend, you'd want to do it for them because it would make their life better. I think anybody has a potential, to get wherever they want to, if given an opportunity. So Chris had lots of input very early, right from the beginning, full on, very, very intense. That is completely necessary. And for me, that's the one thing that I feel that everybody should have the opportunity to receive. Where Chris was, he received 15 sessions of that would be a mixture of OT, physio, speech over the week. There was another young guy that only had 5 sessions a week. The progress between those two, and yet there were similar injuries. Well, he's so far behind Chris. It breaks my heart for that family. Yet they're celebrating where he is and the progress he's making. But I just think it's not fair that he hasn't had the opportunities that Chris has. Chris had damaged his frontal lobe, which obviously regulates your social skills. So he just didn't have any. And that is socially quite hard, because people are so not tolerant of anybody that might make a loud noise or say something inappropriate or do something inappropriate. So it was teaching Chris not how to behave in a social way again. I didn't expect that. I must admit, I didn't expect to have to reintroduce those skills again. And so for a long while we didn't even let him have any access to any media or any mobile phones or anything like that, because that was just way too risky for him. So that even things like that had to be introduced slowly, and going on social media had to be kind of under supervision. He's an adult. This is really hard. He was not always keen for us to see what he was writing or looking at or anything like that, So, and he did offend people, and they would contact us. But it was all about education, about educating them on why Chris was reacting in this way, how his filters were unable to filter things out, and how they needed to respond, and how they had, the consistency of responding in the same way from everybody was the way to support him, and not to take offence, really. And over time, with their strategies and everything, well, socially, he's there. It's back. They've worked. But yeah, that was our challenges.